That's pretty
It's
easy.
just at the bottom.
That's pretty easy. Okay. Still good?
So good. Yep.
All right, perfect. All right. So I'm going to cut this piece. I think I can cut this piece, but we'll talk about an intro. I'll start off, introduce myself, then I'll introduce you. I've got your card here so I don't mess up any information.
Okay.
You want to be introduced as Nutrition in Motion? Like that's the company you're associated with? Okay. And then
yep.
Information where they can find more information, just your Instagram page. Is that okay? Or
my Instagram or in my email if they want to reach out.
Okay, I'll do both. All right. So let's go ahead and get our first little try at this thing. So that'll be fun.
All right.
I've never done this, so
we're winging it. It's all good.
That's it. I love it. Okay. What's going on, everybody? My name is Garrett Baker. I'm a performance specialist, personal trainer, strength conditioning coach, whatever you want to call it. But today I'm here with dietitian Magan, Magan Cortez. She's with Nutrition in Motion. If you'd like to reach out to her for more information, you have specific questions or whatever it may be, go ahead and give her a follow on Instagram. That's going to be at dietitianmagan, Megan with an A. Magan, and then you can also email her at mcortez@nimrd.com. So Megan, go ahead and introduce yourself. I did a little bit, but tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, what you do, and why you're in this field of dietetics and nutrition.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So I'm Megan. I'm excited to work with you guys. So I'm originally from Oklahoma. I've been in Colorado the past couple of years, but I'm back in Oklahoma. Met Garrett in college, and we thought this would be a good partnership to work with you guys. We both have similar views on nutrition and exercise. I guess what kind of just where I'm at as far as my practice now, I do have my own practice. I'm contracted through a company called Nutrition in Motion, which is just a really large team of dietitians. So in my own practice, I do use the intuitive eating method. Basically, that's just all foods fit, no restrictions, no foods are off limits, and basically just listening to your body and what it's telling you. There is a piece of that intuitive eating portion of it that you can still, know how your body is responding to certain nutrients, what nutrients it needs for your performance, and your goals. So I'm excited for all of this. I think that this will be a really good partnership. If you guys ever have any questions outside of just the general information that I'll provide, like Garrett said, go ahead and reach out through Instagram or my email, and we can probably even leave that information in the content section or the comment section.
Yeah, for sure. So what we're going to do, the reason that we're meeting today is to go over some FAQs of this challenge that we're running. So this challenge that we're running is more of a habit change challenge, more so than a transformation challenge. So at the beginning of the year, everybody's quick to hop on the bandwagon of, let's see how many pounds I can lose, how I can get my body to look like X, Y, and Z. And they typically go in head first and 0 to 100 real quick. And what ends up happening is we see a lot of burnout. So both on my side and the fitness and exercise realm, and then on Megan's side as well, as far as the nutrition, falling off of that. So what we're trying to combat is that initial burnout. So taking somebody through a sustainable progression and going into their fitness journey at the beginning of the year, rather than just saying, let's see how many pounds we can lose this month, and then hoping that we can keep that same change going. And so today we are going to answer a bunch of questions that may be helpful for you in deciding whether this challenge is right for you. And so I'm going to start off asking Megan a couple of different questions. She's going to answer some of my questions as well, but we're going to go ahead and dive right into this thing. So we know that breakfast is one of the most important meals of the day. And we know a lot of people tend to opt out of breakfast and just go straight to coffee. And so a question that I had is, how much caffeine is too much caffeine for one individual?
Yeah, so the recommended amount of caffeine per day is 400 milligrams, which is about 4 cups, 8-ounce cups of coffee. I think a lot of us have really large coffee cups. I know I do.
I sure do.
So 4 cups of the large coffee cups is probably too much. But yeah, like you said, a lot of people tend to use coffee for their breakfast. Coffee is not a meal. It's definitely not bad to have coffee. There's nothing wrong with it. I think just the thing with coffee or any caffeine in general is it's often an appetite suppressant. So having a large amount of caffeine in the morning can make us feel like we're not hungry. But then that usually doesn't set us up for much success later on in the day.
Right. Also, like outside of coffee, I know energy drinks are a big thing. There's sugar-free energy drinks. There's the new Bang energy drinks that are loaded with a lot of other stuff, about 300 milligrams of caffeine per Bang. You got about 80 milligrams of caffeine per Red Bull and the small ones. So like caffeine's everywhere, it seems like, and it's easy for me to go on a caffeine binger after a few cups of coffee in the morning, and then an energy drink, a Bang energy drink to get you through your workout. So
right. Yeah, and I think it's important to know, like, energy drinks, again, they don't usually have the greatest nutrient content in there, but they're also not something you should feel like you can never have. I think it's just knowing, okay, I had 3 cups of coffee this morning. I probably don't need the extra 300 milligrams of caffeine in the afternoon.
Right.
Also, just paying attention to things like how is your sleep quality? Are you able to even fall asleep? Are you feeling jittery throughout the day? Are you getting headaches? Or maybe you're just feeling like you need that extra caffeine because you're skipping meals. So really what you may need is just food for energy versus more caffeine on top of it. I think that's a little bit different for every person, but
it kind of takes me into like my next question of, how important is meal timing? So if we're searching for that caffeine fix, could it be as simple as planning out a meal in that time where we typically feel that downward slope?
Absolutely. I think snacks are very underrated as far as like helping you get through the day and bridging that gap between meals, especially in the afternoon. If you're noticing around 3 o'clock, you're hitting that lull in energy, maybe you just need a snack between lunch and dinner instead of that second coffee. But as far as meal timing in general, I think just knowing what your schedule looks like ahead of time, that can often be a huge barrier for people with meals is, they start going throughout their day and realize they only have 10 minutes to eat lunch and they don't have time to go get something.
Right.
Or, they wake up super early and have a long commute to work. So that's why they skip breakfast. So it's knowing what your day looks like ahead of time and finding ways to prepare for it so that you can have lunch ready to go for your 10-minute break, or have a smoothie for your drive to work for breakfast.
Sure. Great information as usual.
But yeah, so let's kind of talk about the challenge too.
Okay.
So with the workouts, I feel like that's a big part of meal timing as well, is eating around your workout. How long are the workouts supposed to be, like, that you program? Is there a certain time that you typically see?
Sure. Yeah, so great question. And it's going to make a big difference in what you eat before. So the workouts are typically going to be 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So some of them are work at your own pace as quickly as you can get them. Others are going to be very structured in your rest time. So you're not going to be balls to the wall, for lack of a better term, for 30 minutes. Rather, you'll do a set, rest for 90 seconds to 2 minutes, and then do another set. So in that 30 to 45 minutes on one day, you may not burn as many calories, which we can talk about and go into the benefits of not burning as many calories as possible through the session. But one day you may have a lot more rest time than the other day. That's going to be a little bit higher in intensity, but still it's going to be working towards your own. So the typical makeup of every workout that I've planned is for the busy person that doesn't have a lot of time to spend hours and hours working out. It's made for somebody with a busy lifestyle that may or may not work 10 to 15-hour shifts and have 2 kids that they have to take care of. So when I programmed the workout, I took that person in mind and programmed it specifically for them so that they can get in and get out with the minimum effective dose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, does it matter if it's with weights or body weight? Is there really like a difference there?
Yeah. So the workouts can be done with weights, but it's definitely not necessary. And so I use a tempo progression. And so as the movements become easy, so for instance, if I can do 10 push-ups with no problem in perfect form, one way that I can increase without adding any weight is to increase the tempo. And so say I'm lowering on a push-up for 1 second or a 1 count, my progression now would be lower on a 3 count. So you're having to control the movement a little bit longer. Your body's under tension and it's having to work for a longer period of time. And so thus you're going to be burning more calories and become a little bit more stronger, increasing the hypertrophic effect. So if you did have weights, if you were, able to grab some of the weights when coronavirus first hit and everything started flying off the shelves, and you do have a good home gym at your disposal, you're more than welcome to add weight as one way to progress. But everything is programmed and structured to be done without weights. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay.
So that can be done if you're not in the gym, if you're working out at home, or you can do them with whatever equipment that you have at a gym if you're still going to gyms. But just on that point, knowing that tracking exercise is really important and progressing in that sense, to be clear of like, okay, today, week 1, I was able to do 10 push-ups at a 1 count tempo. And then week 2, I was able to do 10 push-ups at a 3 count push tempo. And so looking back and being able to see those, being able to see that clear progress, I'm curious of how that works with nutrition and being able to look back on what you've done and had success with and what you can do. Like you said, planning is kind of the cornerstone of success for us. And so how does journaling your food help with weight loss?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. It's going to obviously depend on the person and their background with journaling. I think that can be very triggering to eating disorders as far as like tracking macros, counting calories, all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
For someone that doesn't have that relationship with food, journaling, even if you're just journaling, not necessarily calories, but you're journaling what you ate and the timing of it, that can just be helpful knowledge of, okay, at this time of the day, kind of going back to what we were talking before of this time of the day, I'm feeling really exhausted every day.
Right.
Well, looking back on what your meals look like, if the meal before all you had was just, veggies and a little bit of protein,
right,
maybe going back and adding, some kind of carbohydrate there to give you energy could be helpful. But as far as, weight loss and progression in the gym, it can be really helpful to journal your food of, what's going to work before your workout as far as digestion. You may notice a lot of habits at the end of the day, like snacking mindlessly. You may notice maybe you're eating larger portions than you really need just because you're working at the same time as you're eating and not really paying attention to that.
Sure.
So it can be very helpful knowledge to just kind of see patterns in your day. But I do think it's something that shouldn't be done forever because it can turn into this obsessive habit.
Sure.
Of needing to know every single calorie you put in your body, which isn't always the necessary step to take.
Right. And just on that point, like you brought up something that I think is hardly ever mentioned, as far as like almost the PTSD that you get from journaling, counting calories, etc. I know a lot of people struggle with like yo-yo dieting and hopping from one fad diet to the next fad diet. How do you recommend somebody putting a stop to their yo-yo dieting? And you kind of hit on this in your introduction of as far as intuitive eating. Can you go into a little bit more depth about intuitive eating and some strategies to curb the yo-yo dieting effect?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that we all kind of get roped into in a sense. Diet culture is very in your face, especially this time of year. Promoting a bunch of weight loss diets. And really, when you look at those diets in depth, they're not sustainable. You're cutting out foods that you love, or you're eating such low amounts of food that at some point your body is going to need those calories, and your body is a lot stronger than you think that it is, and your mind is.
Right.
So it does cause that binging when you restrict for long periods of time. So when you are looking to kind of put some kind of nutrition plan in place, it's really important to look at, is this sustainable long term, or is this just to get me the results I want quickly?
Sure.
Because you can go, they always say like diets don't work, and that's true if you're looking at it in the long term. And I think the thing that holds people back is they're looking at short term if it works or not. Well, yeah, it's gonna make you lose weight, but long term you're probably going to gain the weight back because you didn't do it in a sustainable way.
Right.
So whenever you are trying to get out of that cycle, a couple of things that could help are really identifying what those food rules are for you. If you're feeling like you have to restrict certain things, making sure you're addressing that. Working with someone is always a big thing. I think it's really hard to go through that on your own. But also just finding what works for you and not feeling like you have to follow certain rules just because someone else is.
Sure. That's good information. Even for me, is like that little point of accountability that works so well in all these other non-fitness related things, like you think of like AA meetings and stuff like that. Their foundation is the accountability piece and leaning on somebody else for help. And so I think that's often undervalued, as finding somebody that's going to help you through it and walk with you through it. So
yeah, absolutely. And same with this challenge. I think that's one of the biggest pieces that a lot of people are missing, is that accountability part. So having the group to keep each other accountable, as well as you and I on the Facebook group, keeping the group accountable.
Absolutely. And just to kind of follow up on that piece is, with the group, some of the workouts in the app that we're going to be working off of, the Train Heroic app, which is, there's no additional cost for that app to use it. And instead, it's going to bump into the entirety of the program. So it's an expense on our end. The consumer won't have to do it, but there's a lot of chat features and different ways that you can communicate from the app. So you're not just getting the accountability piece from the Facebook group, where we'll kind of share our troubles and our successes in the group, whereas we're a little bit more specific with the Train Heroic app. So from the app, I'm able to do a lot of things. It's a phenomenal app, one of the most conclusive ones that I've seen in the realm. I've been searching for something to use as a platform for the last 3 years. And this one's definitely the easiest that I've seen, and had a lot of success with a bunch of clients on it. From that app there, you're able to comment specifically on an exercise. And so, if you're having trouble with that exercise, I'm able to go in and see like what the proper, or what form you're using, where you're having troubles at. You give me a breakdown of your movement, you can send me a video, and I'll be able to, correct form from there. And so it gives you another level of accountability, just to know, and that confidence piece that what you're doing, if you're doing it properly, if you're at harm for injuring yourself, anything like that. It's perfect for beginners to use, because there is a lot of interaction and a lot of talking on these movements. It's not as ideal as that in real time effect that you get with a personal trainer, or that one-on-one that you get. But needless to say, you're still in communication with a personal trainer, a trained professional who's been doing this for years, and that's the standard that's set with Sustain Performance is credible professionals in the field that have been doing it, that have that do it themselves and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So that's one of my biggest complaints, if you will, with a lot of the online programs and stuff like that. You can find a relatively cheap program out there anywhere. However, you don't get the communication. If you ask a question, you may be transferred to customer support, who may or may not have a background in the field, and may or may not get back to you in 2 or 3 days. So that's one of the things that I'm really hammering on at the first of the year, is that communication aspect and being able to respond to people in real time. So that level of accountability is always going to be there. Like I said, we're here for you in your goals.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you mentioned like it's still good for beginners. That's what I see is a lot of times a big barrier for people who are new to lifting is, they may see a workout that's wrote out for them, but they don't know what any of the movements are. They don't know the form. I know when I first started lifting, I didn't know what anything was called. It was like I needed videos to show that. So if there is someone that's wanting to do this, but they don't necessarily know what a deadlift is there going to be a place where they can find what that would look like and then ask questions about form?
Absolutely. So each exercise that I program has a video attached with it, along with a written description of how you should do it, where you should feel it, and then how you can progress or regress. And so, for instance, a push-up. A push-up's a relatively simple move, but there's, to my knowledge, only been like one, maybe 2 regressions to a push-up. And it's a modified knees down or a girl push-up, which I don't like the term. And then there's a wall push-up. There's never really there's never a systematic way to say, okay, I'm past a wall push-up. I can do that easily. I can do 10 reps, no problem. I need to move down to the floor, but there's all these questions about if I should, how do I know if I'm doing it correctly? And those questions are answered in the descriptions of each exercise. And so it's, if you can do this, then you should progress. Or you can even stick with your wall push-up and progress in a way that we've talked about earlier, as far as increasing the tempo. So adding time to it, or adding some weight to a modified push-up before you go to a full push-up. So there's plenty of ways to progress, and you're always going to know how to progress and what you're doing before you get into that movement.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's perfect. And I wanted to kind of go back to when you were talking about injuries. So if someone was pregnant, would they be able to do this challenge, and how would that work? I know there's a lot of research around exercising when you're pregnant, and what that should or shouldn't look like. I'm sure it's very dependent on the person, but I just didn't know what your insight was and how you could modify the workouts.
For sure. So just a little bit of background about me. Several knee surgeries, so 3 in total. I'm still working with a torn ACL that I haven't had operated on, which I plan to get on this year. So modifications is huge, and I don't like training to injuries. There's a lot of research out there that says that we can unilaterally train and still see some benefit on the injured limb. So unilaterally meaning I can train on my right leg, that's perfectly fine, and see some kind of training effect on my left side. Now it's obviously not going to be to the extent of what I would be getting on my right side, but it's better than nothing. So knowing that, I've taken a very cautious approach to programming things. And again, this is where the app comes so in handy, or so, it's just so useful. If somebody tells me that, okay, I have a torn ACL and that I haven't got operated on my left side, I'll go in there and see what movements are going to possibly bother that left ACL. And we can make modifications. It's going to be very personal to that person. It's going to take, some time, either a FaceTime call or whatever it may be, but just to get the movement to where we can feel it without bothering that specific area. And so that's where the little personal touch comes back into play. As far as pregnancy goes, there's this large scare, and probably more so for me, but I've seen a woman do, she's a CrossFit woman, just to preface, but she's been doing CrossFit all of her life, and all the way up to, through her 3rd trimester, she was doing barbell snatches, which is to me, it freaks me out. Like, as not a professional. And so doing the research and figuring out, okay, is this really safe? The answer is yes. So if she's continuing exercise that she's proficient in, and she's never had an accident, the only thing that I would caution is there's a possibility that you could injure yourself that's not related to the exercise itself, rather than just a mistake. And so that would be my only caveat to that piece. There are some contraindications as far as, getting your heart rate extremely high, or getting your body temperature extremely high might affect the fetus. Laying on your back and doing crunches is a no-go, as it's added abdominal pressure on the fetus, and something that you can steer clear of. However, I would kind of say that if you were active going into your pregnancy, this challenge is great for you. Now, if this is the first time doing stuff for you, getting active again, and maybe it's like your preparation for your pregnancy, I would say yes and no. And yes being, you should do it only if you're committing to reaching out for, additional, almost like your extra credit stuff. You have to be on top of that stuff. If I wouldn't just give somebody a program and tell you to do it and that you're going to be safe if you've never done exercise before, if you haven't done it before. So if you utilize the support that you're going to get from the challenge, then absolutely it's safe for you. Just being in contact and being in communication with one another, it's going to be imperative. So being able to train around and having modifications for everything as far as pregnancy or injuries go, as long as we're in communication, you're A-okay. So.
Yeah, I love that. So as long as, they take that personal responsibility to make sure they're asking questions and, just kind of letting where they're at, in their pregnancy and what their doctor recommends and all of that, then you're able to provide those modifications and that feedback for them.
Absolutely. So I'm going to switch tracks just a little bit, but
okay.
Actually not even switching tracks. Let's just jump into the future. So say mommy had a kid and the kids are going wild, right? They have their snacks that they've been used to for a long time. And, say it's Pop-Tarts and muffins and all the good stuff that we want to eat and we usually eat, but we're trying so hard just to move away from that because we know it's not ideal for our body. It's not the most nutrient dense foods that we could have. If say I need to change my habits and my child's habits, do you have any ideas for like healthy snacks for kids or healthy snacks for me that I might enjoy? Go ahead and speak on that for a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I think a big fear, I'm sure, for all moms is making sure their kids are healthy and, they're taken care of, they're getting the nutrients they need. I think that's a lot of responsibility in the mom that it can feel really scary. And I think a big thing to always remember is that we're all born intuitive eaters. Kids know when they're full and when they're hungry and what they want and what feels good to them. And that's a big part to remember too, is I think because moms care so much, they want to micromanage those little things a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that can almost put unnecessary rules around food when kids are little and they are still very in tune with their intuition. With that being said, though, I think, kids are going to steer towards the things that are available to them most often. So if you're finding all your kids want is Pop-Tarts for a snack, maybe it's setting out a Pop-Tart and a bowl of fruit for them to have half and half, or they can just get the fruit. But, kids aren't going to think to ask for things that they've never had. So it's that introduction piece of just having it available to them. A lot also with kids, it takes several introductions sometimes. They may not love broccoli the first time that you put it in front of them, but if you keep just having it available to them, they may be willing to try it and then they may enjoy it. So that's kind of the strategy I would say around it, but also, I think it's important also for kids to make it fun. So I definitely encourage my moms that I counsel, to get on Pinterest and find fun ways to, make the apples look like monsters, or have, cut them certain ways, or have like fun dips to go with it. That makes it a little more interesting for kids too.
It's kind of like the step up from, the airplane trick, getting your kids to eat, the babies, the toddlers to eat their nasty little carrots or whatever that may be. Yeah,
right.
I like it.
So I would say like looking at ways to make it fun or interesting or make them want to at least try it. And if they hate it, they hate it. But again, sometimes it takes several introductions for certain foods.
It's a process. Do you have any recommendations for like salty cravings and sweet cravings? So I know for me, when I get a real salty craving, one of my favorite snacks, instead of chips and mindlessly eating chips, and we know that, the act of eating chips isn't necessarily just for hunger, and it's more of like, a boredom thing, and you got to get that crunch sensation, you get the salty sensation. So I really like veggie straws. And so it's not ideal to eat a whole bag of those, but being able to like portion those out is what really saves me from eating a bunch of mindless calories.
Right. Yeah. And, I think that piece in itself can often be the biggest factor of that, of maybe it's if you buy your favorite bag of chips, but it's, a huge bag. Maybe it's pre-portioning them into Ziploc baggies if you tend to eat them in front of the TV.
Yeah.
That way, when you do grab the chips from the cabinet, you have that end point to stop.
Right.
Because it is kind of mindless. Another good, I think a lot of people, when they really start to think about why they go towards chips, it's for like what you said, it's either salty or it's crunchy. Like they're craving one of the two factors of the chip.
Right.
So if it's crunchy, like I know for me, I do crave like the textures. So sometimes I just want like carrots and hummus.
Right.
Versus like, and that gives me that same satisfaction. If you're wanting something salty, veggie straws is great. You can do like crackers and cheese. You could do, some kind of homemade dip with, carrots or celery, apples. So it's just, looking at what piece of that you're wanting. But, I think, or even like popcorn or something like that could be a good salty option too.
I really like the idea of combining the two. So, it's a little give and take, right? So, like you said, pre-portion your chips out, but maybe this is a discipline thing where you have to eat your carrots and hummus first or your apple first, so it gives you a little bit more of a filling sensation, something with a little bit more fiber, and then eat your pre-portioned chips. So you get both worlds.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be, I can't ever have chips, I can only have carrots.
Right. And so that kind of takes me off script a little bit, but there's this theory called or this idea of maintenance calories, right? To where you can kind of have for lack of a better phrase, have your cake and eat it too. But you're able to eat some of the things that you really, really enjoy. And it's something that I've never been able to put in words, but you're eating really well most of the time and you still get to eat what you really, really enjoy. So you can eat your cookies and you can eat your chips and you can eat your stuff. But I think oftentimes, especially coming up in the next few weeks, it's an all or nothing overhaul of your diet to where you think you can't have anything that you've grown up loving and enjoying. And again, this isn't for a physique competition or a bodybuilding competition that we're after. So the diets don't have to be to the calorie, to the T. We can have a lot of variance because this is a lifestyle more so than an overhaul in your diet and complete change of who you are. I don't know. I just kind of got off on a tangent, but the idea of being able to have your snacks and know that it's not a bad thing to do that just because you see all the fitness buffs who've never eaten a French fry in their life or haven't eaten a French fry in 10 years, blah, 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 type of people.
Right.
I think,
and that goes back to the whole intuitive eating idea that I practice. And I know we've had this conversation before too, of that's how you practice as well to keep from the yo-yo dieting aspect is when you allow yourself to still have cookies anytime that you want, they don't become this huge thing with all this excitement around it where when you are around cookies, you feel like you have to eat 10 of them.
Right. Exactly. It's almost like you're having this withdrawal from it and then you have to binge on it after that.
Right. Especially leading up to this time of year, I think that's where people find themselves overeating is they're either dieting leading up to Christmas so that they can have the treats, or they're planning on starting a diet right after. And either way, whether you're restricting now or you're planning to restrict, that binge is still probably going to happen because that's the way our minds work. Exactly. And so I think just, there is that happy medium of having those maintenance calories and, eating majority of your foods from sources that make you feel good and function well and perform well and, be able to think clearly and not feel bogged down, but also allowing the things that you want when you want them, so they don't become this big thing that you feel out of control around.
Exactly. Well, Megan, we're running up on time, but I think we covered a lot of really good information. Do you have any just like blaring questions that, maybe somebody should know before going into the challenge or committing to the challenge for me as far as the workout side goes?
I do. So kind of a last question. There's probably like 3 questions wrapped up in this, but as far as like what the workouts look like during the week, how many a week are there? What if someone only wants to start with, X amount of days? Does it matter? And then, do you change the workouts every week, or are they kind of the same? And what's your thought behind needing to change the workouts to trick your body?
Perfect. It's a great question. So there are 6 programmed workouts. And when I say 6 to 7, I'm including recovery days, like almost mandatory recovery days. So midweek, you're going to have a recovery day. And at the end of the week or start of your week on Sunday, you'll have a recovery day. Saturday would be off. And then Friday's a makeup for whatever you missed during the week. It starts off with a strength workout, upper body push on Monday. And so that's going to be one of the days that's really kind of slow, getting you back into the groove of working out for the week. It's kind of setting your week up. Think about like rolling into the week rather than, shooting up as high as you can. Tuesday is going to be a tougher Tabata day. And so it's going to be a little bit more high intensity. It's only going to last about 15 to 45 minutes in total, including the warm up and some additional cardio. That being said, cardio is not, you don't need to do additional cardio on top of it. The general recommendation for exercise, as per the National Academy of Sports Medicine, is 150 to 180 minutes per week. And so we only need that much. That's like the minimal effective dose. And so if we can hit that marker with all of our recovery days included, we're going to be just fine and starting ourselves out right. And so 6 to 7 days per week as far as our workouts go. Again, 30 to 45 minutes. You got a real easy kind of introductory, a lot of rest time on that Monday and Wednesday workout. Wednesday's going to be lower body focused. And then you got a combo day on Thursday or Friday. So depending on how your legs are feeling, you're going to be able to, either switch that workout to Thursday or have Friday and Saturday off. So that's going to be the workout structure as far as the week goes. And then the idea of like tricking your body is one of my favorite misnomers of the fitness industry. You don't need to trick your body. And I guess when I personally hear trick your body, I think of new workouts, different exercises, different intensities, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not true, because if you can do that, but you'll see it's almost like I think of everything as like a scientific equation, right? So every workout is a scientific equation. And so if we did this like a science experiment, I want to see exactly what's working and what exactly isn't working. And so if I look at from week to week and I have several different variables that I'm not sure what works and what doesn't work, then I don't know what to change and what to fix in the program. And so, but if I can see clear progression from Monday's workout, and I see that, this week we did 10 and next week we were able to do 12 and then we were able to do 15, that's clear progress over time. And when we start tricking and throwing in a bunch of different variables, it's hard to continue on that progress, continue sustainable performance, right? So I caveat that with, personality type. So type A is probably not going to like the idea of doing new workouts every single week. Whereas type B, that's the only way that they can stick to something, right? Is, this gets boring and I don't want to do it anymore. A lot of things get boring, and instead of me saying, this is science and this is how you should do it, you should do the same exercises for the rest of your life, and this will absolutely work for you if you do this. I know that's not feasible because it doesn't work with me. However, one way that I found to switch up the programming, it's a system called undulating programming rather than linear. And so if you picture a line going straight up and progressing perfectly, that's called linear periodization. And undulating periodization is where we have ebbs and flows of our progress. And so we have ups and downs with our training system. And so by knowing that we're going to adapt and our body is going to recover every 42 to 78 hours, we can plan those little peaks and valleys of progress and intensities. And so that's kind of how the workouts are going to be programmed throughout the challenge, is on that ebb and flow, knowing that some weeks are going to be harder than others, and then planning for those peaks to be our peaks, our peak performance. And so that's my ideology on tricking the body and switching up workouts every single day and every single week. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, no, I think that's something that you hear a lot, mostly just on Instagram and influencers. I hear that from, and I, of course, without that being my scope of practice, I never really knew what, the science was behind that. But that makes a lot of sense. So that's cool to know that, that you're kind of working with both things there of people needing, some variety, but also the science of you don't have to do it to also see progress.
Exactly. I just have one last question for you, and it's for me, like, assuming, because like you said, when you're first starting off, you didn't know what to, say somebody gave you a workout sheet that had deadlifts and incline bench press on there, and you didn't really know what it was, and so you had to go and find it. We can easily say that you need to have carbs, this many carbs and this many fats and this many proteins. I just wanted to know, I guess I wanted you to describe, like, the nutrition label in short. I mean, it could get pretty in depth, but like for a beginner who's just now figuring everything out, how do you read a nutrition label? And then secondly, another really basic one that everybody says, drink more water. How much water should we be drinking?
Yeah. So with the nutrition label, I would say the most important part to start with is if you have a food allergy, at the bottom, there's going to be an ingredients list. So making sure that, if you're allergic to eggs, making sure that it doesn't contain eggs. And a lot of times, if it's one of the 8 most frequent food allergies, it'll have it in big bold letters that it contains that. So I would say start there if you have a food allergy or something that you're, intolerant to. The next thing to kind of look at is the portion sizing. It'll have the calories in big bold fonts, but that doesn't mean that the whole package is that amount of calories. They've gotten a lot better about making portion sizes realistic. When they first, a couple of years ago, it was like half of a candy bar was a serving, which no one eats half a candy bar, right?
Or like a bottle of chocolate milk. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, like the whole thing should be a portion.
Sure.
So knowing what that portion is based on the calorie count. So if you're looking at, your body works well with 60 grams of carbohydrates roughly before a workout. So looking at what that portion size is and then how many carbohydrates are in that portion. So that's where I would start, is the ingredients, the portion sizing. Then you can obviously work your way down of how much fiber is in there, how many added sugars are in there. So the total carbohydrate is broken down into fibers and added sugar.
Right.
They're not extra carbohydrates, it's just part of it. And then the amount of protein in there. So if you're trying to build muscle, and you're noticing maybe you're not recovering well and your protein intake becomes important to know those numbers, then that's when it would be, beneficial to look through that nutrition label and learn to understand it. Again, if you ever have questions on that, you can definitely reach out to me and I'm happy to walk you through it. And then for water intake, the recommended amount is 8-ounce cups a day. So 64 ounces a day. That's more of kind of like the 150 minutes of exercise that's recommended.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it works for everyone. So I would say the 64 ounces is more of like a bare minimum of the amount of water your body needs to function. Now, if you're working out every single day on this challenge and you are sweating a lot, you're going to need more than the 64 ounces a day. Also looking at things like you're getting headaches throughout the day, if you're not sleeping well, those kinds of things could maybe indicate that you need to increase your water intake.
Love it. Love it. Well, Megan, there's a lot of gold in this almost hour of us talking. I really appreciate you and setting aside some time to shed some light on a lot of these nutrition questions.
Yeah, of course. And I think
but
I think there's a lot of good questions that we probably both get asked a lot in here. I also think there's a long list of more questions that are similar to this. If anyone wants to leave comments of more questions, we could always do this again.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we'll definitely look into here pretty soon, especially as we get this challenge underway. And, those questions start coming in a little bit more frequently, if we will. So, all right. Well, I appreciate everybody you're going to be watching, but please feel free to reach out. Again, Megan's information is going to be located, very accessible for you, down in the caption or comments or wherever this may lie. But again, thank you, Megan, and I'm looking forward to doing this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you guys later.